Welcome back to the aecHive, where we're talking about innovation in architecture, engineering, and construction. I'm Ralph Montague, Director at ArcDocs and co-founder of the aecHive. I'm joined by my fellow co-founder, John Egan. John, do you want to say hi to everyone?
Hi everyone, this is John Egan, CEO of BIM Launcher and co-founder at aecHive. Looking forward to today's discussion.
We're really excited today, joined by Andy Boutle, who's the head of BIM at Kier Construction. He's also the engagement co-lead at the UK BIM Alliance. Andy, you're very welcome. We look forward to talking to you today. And would you give us a little bit of background of yourself and how you got to the position and the work you're doing at the moment, and we can get started?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, good morning, and thanks for having me on today. Yeah, so of course a bit of brief history, not too long, but so I started life in industry as a engineer, mechanical engineer, working for MEP contractors. Did a few years doing that. I always had a hand in and an interest in CAD back in those days, and sort of took on some tasks and responsibilities for that in various sort of aspects and guises. After a number of years, ended up moving across to the consultancy side. So I worked for Atkins for a number of years back in sort of the late 2000s when sort of the BIM scene was starting to hit. So I was sort of dabbling in Revit and doing a kind of CAD Revit manager role at Atkins for a number of years on the MEP side. It's really good. And again, a lot of these things are timing, aren't they? And then I saw an advert come up for Kier for a regional BIM coordinator, as it was in those days, which pricked my interest. And I thought, yeah, that sounds like something I want to do. So moved to Kier, focused in a BIM role, and yeah, spent a number of years on the sharp end of supporting projects, which is really good to sort of get that grounding and understand the various different aspects and challenges as you do across project teams, implementing different technologies and processes. And then wound my way in the last number of years. I've been head of BIM for the construction division, so unfortunately not at the sharp end these days, but very much internally working with our specialists across the business and other stakeholders and staff to try and standardise what we do across the business. Obviously keep progressing and improving our ways of working, our template documentation and resources, and trying to drive information management really widespread and gain efficiencies and improve how we do things, make people's lives easier, hopefully, is the goal. So really enjoyable, probably an element of strategical focus probably, but very much I'm still tactical, very much about getting things working on the ground as well as the strategic direction. So that's my Kier day to day these days, and a brief history. Also, like Ralph said, I also work for in the UK BIM Alliance, looking after engagement with PAM and working with. I mean, it's an incredible experience. You get to work with all aspects of people across industry, again, to try and help industry along, and that's given me access to various standards committees and the like. So, yes, that's me.
So you've done a lot of work. You've been at the forefront, I suppose, with all the work you've been doing at the UK Alliance of change in the industry as it is. The change has been, it seems slow for us anyway. We're like in this BIM space for about 12 years. If you'd asked me 12 years ago, it would take 12 years for the industry to adopt a digital process, something that's promised to make the industry more effective, more productive. We thought that would be crazy. And yet, we are 12 years later, still seem to be trying to convince the industry that's the way to go. And what's your feeling about the sort of pace of innovation in the construction industry?
Probably similar to you, Ralph. I'm a bit of a skeptic and a realist, but also probably an optimist. But you're right, and I don't think any of us. We all know the scale of the challenge, I think, but it is amazing, isn't it, when you get another 5 or 10 years down the road and we're still struggling and talking about the same topics. So there's that side of things, but then at the same time you do see like there's been considerable change, I think, and the culture's shifting. The government, for want of a better word, are actually quite supportive with all the initiatives that are being pushed out. It all helps pull us all and push all in the same direction, I think, and it does feel like. I'll probably say this every couple of years as well, but the last couple of years, it does feel like the momentum is building so much that we're starting to move a bit more at pace in that space. Data is a common discussion topic, and digital it seems to be for be at the core of business strategies now a lot more than it was, I think, is what I feel and see.
But do you feel, for most people anyway, the majority, it's more like they're being coerced and pushed into a way of working rather than them identifying the sort of business benefits to themselves personally to work in a more streamlined way? And why do you think that is? I mean, is it because each company just playing a small part in a bigger picture and, they don't see the overall picture? Or?
Yeah, I thought, exactly that. And I think you're always going to have that to a point, no matter what the change is. So some people are keen to try and explore and want to find new ways of working and better ways, but others will, you have to literally show them it before they'll jump, which is understandable, isn't it? So you're always working with that balance, that bleeding edge, and then trying to get the majority to play the part. But I think, you're right. There's an element of being coerced and, well, we've got to do this because our clients are asking for it, no matter where you are in the supply chain. And we absolutely have to have that. But then, and again, you probably see it at all levels. If you look internally within a business, you've got that same kind of industry scale problem or challenge, that you've got, some people that generally want to embrace it and look to create efficiencies and actually invest to get that outcome. But then there's the commercial mindset of that we don't want to invest until it's been proven that can deliver a return on investment. So it's that tricky balance that we're all dealing with.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, I feel is a misunderstanding amongst most people that if you follow BIM and a digital process, it's somehow going to cost you more money and take you more time than not doing that. So, which is a little bit bizarre because the whole idea of the ISO 19650 standard and BIM is to be more organized and digitized for the purposes of being more efficient and more productive. In other words, it should save you time and should save you money. And, there's still so many people perpetuating this message out there that, well, we can do BIM if you like, but it's going to cost you more and it's going to take longer.
Yeah.
And often those are sort of well-known and well-respected either consultants or sometimes even the tier one contractors. Sort of BIM is an optional extra that's nice to have, but not necessary.
Absolutely. I mean, we did a recent survey, a national survey through the UK BIM Alliance, and we're actually about to publish a report next week that analyses presents the findings with some analysis, and what you've just said is that, some of the comments back on some of the questions about, do you feel BIM's relevant to your role, things like that. There's still a huge misunderstanding and misconception of the standards, and like you say, what the whole intention is and what the benefits are to be had out of it. It's a real mixed bag, and we've still got a lot of work to do as industry, as individuals, as groups, as initiatives to really try and get that majority view on things, on life. I think the other thing is as well that, it's like many things, it's seen as if we employ BIM on this project, processes and the like, then it should be a sticky plaster solution and we should suddenly see benefits. And what people don't often take into account is that learning and continuous improvement. So probably the first 2 or 3 projects, a company or a team is implementing BIM, they won't see savings. They're going to actually have to put in a bit more time and effort. And once you get good at it, obviously that's when you start to see those benefits. So it's not something you can just switch on and off and expect to suddenly see a return. It does need work and effort.
Yeah, I've seen that on a lot of companies, the sort of attitude that, well, we'll hire a BIM guy or BIM girl. So there's one person that will solve all the problems.
Absolutely.
And it's almost like when health and safety came out, you hired a health and safety person and that was meant to solve all the problems. And eventually people realized, well, that's not actually the solution. You have to have a health and safety culture amongst every person. Absolutely. Every single person that's participating on a project on site has to have an understanding of the risks and the health and safety issues. So, I think that's probably where we haven't got to. I think general people still feel BIM is something that the BIM team does, or the BIM person. And what's quite bizarre is almost seen as completely disconnected from everything else that typically happens on a project in relation to information. So, for instance, and you'll know this as a contractor, RFIs, requests for information, are a core part of the way contractors conduct business between their subcontractors and the consultants. And somehow RFIs has got nothing to do with information management, even though it's a request for information. Technical submittals are a key part of the way contractors work in terms of gathering information about the systems, products, materials, etc., that they propose to use, and submit those to the consultants for their approval before they implement that work. And yet somehow technical submittals have got nothing to do with information, even though technical submittals are a submittal of information. Health and safety requires the collection and gathering of health and safety data, risk assessments, information about the products and materials that are used on the project, and yet health and safety has got nothing to do with information. And like
we can go on, can't we? Equality is exactly that.
Yeah, building controls, building control approvals for fire safety, disability access, etc., is effectively the submittal of certain information to demonstrate compliance with regulations to the building control authority, and yet that's got nothing to do with information management. So information management has just become this sort of extra thing you do as a box ticking exercise when in actual fact it should be sitting across the top of all those traditional information production and information sharing.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't want to say it's a support for it, but nail on the head, everyone has a part to play in information management and always has done. And there's that recognition now that needs to happen that, okay, so we will produce it or interact in some shape or form. And then it's now the standardization of how that approach works collaboratively across the team to then drive the benefit. And I suppose that's one of the things I think is really good with ISO 19650 is moving the language a little bit, isn't it? So BIM is still features in the title and in the document in the documents, but it is very much moving to information management to try and get that understanding that that is the asset to rule all assets, isn't it? And it informs everything we do. Decisions are made on information, so why on earth wouldn't we as an industry want to be really good at information management?
Absolutely. And I think as well, and I was going to say, I'm a great supporter of the UK BIM Alliance and all of the great work you've been doing. And obviously that's been of tremendous benefit to us in Ireland because we don't have that sort of structure and commitment from our own government or even the industry players. So Ireland has definitely benefited tremendously from the relationship with the UK and following what you guys are doing over there. At the same time, I was thinking today that when you think about all the little players in the industries and you think about small contributors like carpenters, plumbers,
trades,
whatever, everybody's playing a little part. And I think when we look at all the fantastic guidance and that you guys have produced, it's a mountain of information in itself. I don't know how many hundreds of pages and videos. And so it's a stellar piece of work that the Alliance has done. But I think, people are wondering, like, what's relevant to me? How do I find
great point.
The 5 or 6 things that are relevant to me as a whatever you are? Because I think one of the issues is there's so much information available today through the internet and there's no shortage of information to say.
Absolutely.
And the biggest problem is trying to filter through, the reams of information to find out what's relevant, to you as an individual. Nobody has the capacity to process all the information that's available. So I don't know if that's been a topic of discussion.
It has.
Within
the
group.
It's almost like I primed you for that, but I really didn't. So no, and it's exactly, and we're again. So the guy, just going back to the guidance, then obviously sits in the UK BIM framework website that is produced by mostly people working in the Alliance, but a wider community as well. So you're exactly right, and we've had an acute awareness that there's big chunky PDF documents now, and that the initial intent was to get a consensus across information management practitioners and provide guidance for predominantly people to perform in that role, so they can then get a consistent understanding and then hopefully apply that within their context of their businesses. But you're absolutely right. We've had discussions and the direction ahead is now, okay, we've got the real technical guidance. Now we need to come back out of it, back out of the detail and make it more accessible to, like, I'm a small plumber. I'm turning up to a project. Actually, what the hell's this got to do with me? Exactly that case in point. So maybe develop some sort of persona-based, really high-level guidance, just touching on the important stuff for the going down the tiers of the supply chain. Exactly as you said. I mean, there's a real positive update coming to the UK BIM Framework website in the next release, which I believe is Q3 this year. So rather than having the PDF documents that you have to go and download, it's going to be an online searchable resource. So you could still take a PDF should you want to, but actually it's going to be an online filterable, searchable resource, which will hopefully just make it more accessible for even information management practitioners, let alone anyone else ahead. But yeah, there's a real focus ahead. We've got the content now. It's more about then producing potentially some tools, and I'll steer away from using the word templates, but some useful tools, as well as that high level and more persona based guidance ahead, I think.
That sounds fantastic. I think it's definitely what the industry needs. I suppose another challenge we have recognized looking at the ISO 19650 standard and the activities that have to be carried out, to follow this process, which is meant to deliver all the fantastic benefits. And I think it's fair to say if you don't follow the process, then you're not going to get the benefits. And that's, it's not as if it's going to happen by accident. So you've got to be deliberate about following the process. But when you look at it, there's so much upfront work that has to be done by the clients, the employers or the developers, the appointing parties. That, to us anyway, in practice is still the biggest problem. We see design teams being appointed without any information requirements, sometimes not even a brief. Get started, show me what I can get on the site, get a planning application in. And, so the design team are appointed, off they go. There's no structure. There's no discussion on how the information is going to be produced and delivered. Where the focus is on the planning, maybe the concept design or the planning application, without any of that upfront work being carried out by the clients. And often most of the clients are developer type people who actually don't intend to operate the thing at any stage. They're either going to sell the site on with the benefit of a planning, or they're going to sell the site on with the benefit of a tender, or they're going to rent it out to sell it on completion of construction. So even the motivation for those type of clients to put the structures in place to carefully manage information is quite challenging.
Yeah.
I know that's different in government work, and because the government agencies typically would have a long-term vested interest in the assets. But I suppose any asset that gets constructed, somebody's going to have a vested interest in it at some point in time.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The challenge is, I think the standard's right, isn't it? It's putting that onus on the client, on the appointing party to really specify what you need. And it's right to do that. In reality, hopefully that traction, that does push and pull clients to do that more, to see the benefit. But of course, in practice, we still see quite often a misunderstanding of giving a proper brief and setting information requirements. So there's definitely a bit of a responsibility. I see as us as a contractor, we'd offer that consultant, part of the service is to help support, consult where required, and work with clients to help them to get to that place where there are gaps. And then just picking back on what you just said about the developer client, that can be definitely an issue. But I think hopefully as we go forward, information carries value, financial value as well. So, for selling on an asset, you'd like to think that if you've got really good information about that asset, then that carries a value too. So even if you are developing and selling on, then there's a good case to actually get that information right, to reflect the asset you're selling as part and parcel of what you're selling on. Yeah. It probably does lean much easier, and it's more of an attractive offer, isn't it? Probably to clients who manage portfolios to a point, or serial procuring clients.
Yeah. Right. And even if you're selling a development with the benefit of a planning permission, if the information about that development was in a digital format, that the next team that gets cut along can
Absolutely.
take that and start from there rather than going back and starting again.
Yeah.
Because that's the problem. Everything's issued in a PDF or paper document. So the next team has to literally redo all that work.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Absolutely. Exactly.
Get back to the starting point. Yeah.
And again, I think just also like, of course, you can follow standards by the letter, and that would be the ideal and the best practice. But just applying some of the fundamentals proportionally in certain cases, would be that to gain value on. You don't have to necessarily do it all. Do the proportional parts that may drive some value. That's shouldn't be seen as an all or nothing necessarily. I don't think.
We could bring this on to a topic, John, that's of interest to you, but if all this information that's being produced at various stage was in a digital format, then it has to be stored, as digital files somewhere. And this is where the concept of the common data environment set out in the standard comes into play. And I think there's probably a misconception that common data environment is the same thing as a single software solution. Yeah, and I don't think that was the intention. And definitely when you read the ISO 19650 standard, it doesn't suggest that it has to be a single software solution. And of course, when you have multiple parties participating together, it's quite difficult to have a single software solution. It's not impossible, but it's difficult because you're basically forcing people to use systems that maybe they're not familiar with, etc. So, I mean, the idea, and John and I have spoken about this a lot, is that software solutions should be connected, just as the way you don't force people to use Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge or Firefox more on the internet. It used to actually be, I remember the days of the internet where certain pages worked on certain browsers, and you just, that was the scenario. But now use any browser, any device, everything's connected. So what's your take on this concept of a common data environment being more than just a single software solution? Is it or should it be a connected platform?
Is that to John or me? Sorry.
To you. So
John,
sorry. I'm sure John will.
No, well, yeah, I'd say
about it.
So absolutely not a single platform. I'd be amazed. I've never seen a scenario where every supply and demand chain are all working in one platform for what a CD is trying to do. I think the ISO deliberately clarifies that it isn't one solution for all. It talks about distributed CD, which would be supply chain side, and the project CD, which would be the client's environment that the lead appointing party would interact with the published information. But absolutely. I mean, there's a really big misconception. Again, we see it a lot across some of our teams that if there's something in the tender document saying, yes, we need you to interact into this platform, please, whether it's EDMS, CDE or another tool, that we have to work in that with our supply chain, and we're going to have to ditch our tools to go and work with the clients. But it's never is it saying that, and always we'd put, as a main contractor, we'd put a platform, in front of whatever client solution was there to work with our supply chain, and then the information would need to then pass from one to the other, which is when we get into John's speciality and what he's trying to do. And of course we need a common language or standard of being able to do that in an automated fashion without poor old dot controllers having to download and upload hundreds and thousands of times to move stuff in between systems.
My question would be, how do you think that ISO 19650 workflows and file naming convention is actually helping us achieve a higher degree of efficiency when sharing information between different stakeholders, cross-domain and cross-vendor?
Good question. I mean, and again, I suppose it depends on your national annex, doesn't it? But assuming you have an annex to determine the information container naming convention, Of course, that's one bit of commonality that systems can get configured to accept. So I'm assuming that can, that could allow that unique string to allow the passing between, exchange between systems. But I think the challenge also, of course, our UK's National Annex also recommends Uniclass as a classification. Another sort of commonality that could be help systems to interpret when things are exchanged. I think the bit that's missing is all of the other metadata that's associated to a file in a system. And obviously, of course, there's no, as far as I'm aware, no clear sort of standard of how that metadata is structured. So when those containers pass from system to system, you could potentially lose the, whether it's the revision history metadata, whether it's approvals, lose that effectively that golden thread, isn't it? Of where the file, the document's been worked across the system, what it's had done to it, who's looked at it, approved it, where it's passed. So I think that's the next challenge, isn't it, to get that proper automated exchange of information between systems at a file level.
One thing that we've seen in our line of work is different organizations using their own interpretation of the file name convention, use of classification codes, etc. And it's forced us as a system integrator to provide mapping services with our data integration. It's always been an ongoing debate with Ralph and I that this file naming, or the file name, behaves as a number plate and is obviously unique for each information container, and each I suppose part of that file name represents a piece of metadata. Obviously there is metadata that is really difficult to append into that file name, like the created by, maybe what date this file was created at, what date it was approved at, etc. And that is obviously, that is something that we're obviously mapping between the systems.
Yes, of course.
But I don't see how we could put that kind of information in a file name unless we came up with some sort of, I suppose, standard to generate some unique thing that could be appended into the file name and interpreted on the destination system. But I mean, do you, in your experience, have you found perhaps firstly, do you have experience as a contractor trying to integrate your systems with either your supply chain or the design team or the client systems? And secondly, have you come across, perhaps to a point you talked about earlier, where people are only touching upon BIM and they're kind of taking, only small pieces of it into their organization, is perhaps presenting a bigger challenge for interoperability, because you have two people interpreting different information in different ways, implementing it halfway both ways, and you're like, well, we might as well have not done
it at all.
Not engaged. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good question. Back to the first part of the question. We've had a number of opportunities, and I'll say opportunities, so we've never done it, but there's a couple of opportunities where we'd love to work with. Let's say we're using platform A as a CD, and client's got platform B, and we do need to pass published information into platform B from platform A. We'd love to work with the vendors and the client to actually get some form of automated integration, because there's a lot of products out there, but there's not that many that, if you do it once between platform A and B, those two platforms are going to come up against each other again and again and again and again. So it would hold value, be worth doing once to gain more value of it happening again potentially. So we've never done it or as an automated approach. It's always a manual process, but absolutely there's opportunities ahead, and as soon as we can get something tangible, I'll be jumping on it myself to try and help that along, because that would be a really good thing to get going.
But isn't that part of the problem, just the approach of the implementation of BIM, is that the expectation is for the individual stakeholders within the industry to figure this stuff out. Even though the solution would benefit everybody. Like if you could get a solution to connect platform A to platform B, it would benefit everybody who uses platform A and platform B, and yet, it's left to each individual
instance to try and solve the problem.
By themselves. And obviously, if an individual organization invests time and money in solving that problem, then I suppose that's their competitive advantage, and like they're unlikely just to share that with everybody else. And unless they're very altruistic in their approach. So that's, in my mind, a bit of the problem. It's easy for the government to say, look, you should all sort this out as industry, but it's hardly going to happen in a way that benefits industry as a whole if you leave it up to the individual stakeholders.
I think, So go on, John.
I was just going to comment there that it is quite an unfeasible process, to my mind, it was quite unfeasible to the individual stakeholder, because if they implement, firstly, there's always on project 1, you could be using 2 different platforms. On project 2, you could be using 2 different platforms, and so forth. So to implement a common process across your teams, ideally each integration, and you just change the general process for sharing information. So you'd be in an ideal world, you'd be saying to your project teams, look, don't worry about manually sharing information. You do your approval workflow, the information will flow to the client environment upon approval, let's say, for example. So it is to implement integrations that create common processes or common working process across your team for all platform variations. It's an extremely costly task. And the other thing is that the vendors don't see it as their responsibility. They're bringing to the table their APIs. And they're saying, look, if you want to integrate with a competitor, our marketing message is we provide all things to all people in one place. If that's not good enough for you, go and create an integration with a competitor.
There's a gap there, isn't there? I mean, I will say we've been conducting over last year in Kier, we've been conducting a software application review, starting with the core BIM tools, to really look out in the marketplace and thoroughly and objectively evaluate functionality and all of these things. And it does seem like there's a little bit of a recognition and a change to vendors' approaches. And like you say, like many do, fully open APIs or REST APIs, or sound like I know what I'm talking about there, but I don't. But they seem a lot more willing to work and integrate. But yeah, you're right, John, probably that actually doing the do between system A and system B, there's a gap of who does that and how. I mean, what we're trying to do is, we're pretty much arrived at a core suite of products, and of course there's the benefit of integrating CDE to field solution. Massive benefit, if we can pull drawings at the right time and models potentially without that someone manually downloading and uploading again. And then having that available in model viewer, interrogator, what have you. So we're trying to push those integrations between, but obviously that's not a like for like. So we're never gonna our approach. We don't want to use 2 CDs. We want to use one CD solution, and connect that to one field solution. But I'd imagine even the vendors, and we do have a technology group in the Alliance with some of the sort of the key players here, and those conversations are happening because I think everyone has to understand that we have to pass information from different systems. No one's got the monopoly anymore, albeit there is market share, isn't there? But yeah, more and more it's an open system that needs information to pass between it.
So is there a little bit of a disconnect between the efforts that are happening so you got the technology group under the UK BIM framework, is it? Or
BIM Alliance. BIM Alliance.
BIM Alliance. The Building Smart UK chapter is part of that group.
Yeah, it's part of the UK BIM Alliance. But
Building Smart International have a group that are looking at open API for CD exchange. And from my understanding from John is that work is progressing very slowly and with very little sort of industry support.
Right.
Whereas you would think, particularly in the UK, where there's a mandate and will drive from all directions to kind of streamline this for industry, that there would be a big push to get that work done as quickly as possible on behalf of the industry, not expecting each individual contractor, particularly when you get to the mid and smaller contractors, expecting each contractor to go and solve that problem by themselves, because, well, they're not. Even if a big contractor like Kier can't solve it, then it's very unlikely that a mid contractor or small contractor has any chance of solving that problem. And,
there is on that. There's another group focused on interoperability. That's now, again, it's a government. It's now called the Government Interoperability something group. But again, pulling, and then some of the topics in there, of course, you can go wider. That we're just talking about sort of a information container level now, aren't we? But again, that's trying to promote, really work on some of the problems with open standards and implementation and understanding of those. Talking IFC and Kobe and the like. Also looking at, exactly like you've said, I think there's some initiatives in there for open interoperability between CDE solutions, so that there is work going on there. Like all these things, it probably doesn't happen as quickly as we'd like it to, but there is a recognition and a drive, and interoperability is a massive item and a strategic objective with UK government at the moment that we're hearing. So there's a clear focus there, but quite how long it will take us to get to something tangible as an outcome remains to be seen, I suppose.
I mean, if you were a cynic, you might say there's certain people, certain companies that prefer that problem doesn't get solved. Like there's probably
absolutely
people that make a lot of money from the fact that things don't work so well.
That's the whole problem, isn't it? The old business model of come and play in my system and no one else's, and you can it's breaking that.
Well, I'm not only pointing fingers at vendors. I mean, even within industry, I think.
People can make money out of solving problems. Yeah.
Well, they can make money out of solving problems, or they have control over other people. If you control the environment, you control the information, you control the outcome, basically. And there's definitely a part of the construction industry that makes money from waste.
Yes.
And I remember many years ago, actually, now when we were starting out, talking to one of the bigger architectural practices in Ireland, and the principal said, why would we want to reduce the costs of our project? Our fee is connected to the cost of the projects. And he was serious. He wasn't joking. Because we were saying, well, if BIM's going to save you money, it's going to save you time. And
my fee will be prorated down then if the project value is that much less.
Yeah. Well, you could say the same for contractors. Your margin is on the overall value. So if you reduce the contract value, you effectively
reduce the margin.
Unless you've agreed a maximum guaranteed price, and then you attempt to reduce the cost if there isn't going to be any remeasure. So that, there's probably a lot of these things happening in the background that people don't realize, of business models, and that are stumbling blocks.
Yeah.
Or real obstacles.
We could come on to the sort of new forms of procurement and contracts there, couldn't we? That, we've always seen that as, we can't just get the change that we were hoping from BIM and information management without the procurement and the contractual framework to support that way of working, and like the sort of shared pain and gain type of contracts and things like that. But then, it gives a real encouragement to try and get the value and drive the efficiency and save, make waste savings and the like. But
that's an interesting topic as well, because if you look at the PPC 2000 collaborative contract, I mean, that was produced 10 years ago or more, maybe it could be 15 years ago. And it was designed specifically to address all the problems that were highlighted, the Egan report, the Latham report, to get a more collaborative framework. And yet, I believe a recent, it could have been 2 years ago now, we had David Mosey over from King's College, London, over in Ireland. He was saying that only 6% of contracts in the UK use the collaborative form of contract.
Yeah.
So even though the contract has been there, it's been tested, it's been demonstrated, the framework, particularly with some of the major local authorities, etc., and yet the uptake of those types of contracts has been very
It's
low.
relatively small, isn't it? Yeah, I wonder that as well. And like the IPI and IBA kind of contracts, there's seems to be just many trials and talks of trials, but you never really see it take effect, do you? I mean, I can say the PPC 2000, we come across that quite a lot from a certain client and framework, and the feedback internally from some of our team's eyes is a really good form of contract, and we are seeing, that's driving some of our bigger schemes and collaborative ways of working. And I think we as a contractor, we see the value in that form of contract. So, but yeah, quite why then it's not sticking and getting wider. I'm not sure.
I suppose the choice of contract is made probably long before the delivery team get involved. So the consultants, and I would imagine, I might be wrong, but I would imagine it's the consultants to the clients that are advising the clients which contracts to use, and correctly or incorrectly, they're probably saying you can get more value if you use this type of contract, or maybe it's just laziness because you understand one type of contract, and to learn another type of contract is just going to be more work, and it's what you know, even though it doesn't work. It is amazing to me. Like the PPC 2000 has gone on and become the Framework Alliance contract, and this idea of putting out frameworks of work where you're not just doing one project at a time and continuously competing for one, but you're getting bundles of projects, and you have a pipeline of work with certain larger agencies over time, which brings about lots of economies of scale and efficiencies, and yet people tend to persist in
this to the norm.
low cost adversarial.
Well, I mean, I'd hope again the construction playbook. I hope that that's procurement focused, isn't it? And again, hopefully that adds a little bit more weight and incentive to test some of these, well, not just test, but implement some of these more collaborative and modern contracts.
So coming to our topic of innovation, I mean, innovation is about, for me anyway, is about trying to make things better. I think everyone on this call, we enjoy and love the construction industry. We think it's important in what it does. It's fantastic the industry does in terms of providing the infrastructure for just about every aspect of life. And yet there's so much of the way the industry works that's frustrating and really hard work and tedious and mundane and continuous firefighting and arguing. And so like there's no doubt, well, in my mind anyway, but and anybody is willing to admit that there's room for improvement in the way things work. And so there's room for innovation. Where do you see in the coming, in the short term, in the next sort of 1 to 5 years, the biggest areas of improvement or innovation happening in the sector?
Cool, that's a tough one.
Or what would you hope for?
That's
what would you really like to see? What would make your job really nice? And
it'd probably be boring if it was too easy, to be fair. But no, I mean, at the end of the day, we are coming out of everyone's had a rough time, haven't they, over the last year or so? Yeah, we'd all love to see more budgets, more in the budget for innovation and testing and trialing things. At the moment, I don't think across the board there's probably as much investment into that piece until the economy recovers a bit more. But you could argue at the same time this is really the time it's the right time to take that a bit of a risk and explore things and make yourself more efficient and competitive. So, I never consider myself, an innovator. I think I like to be at the sort of the leading edge and trying to practically implement, things that the innovators have explored and started to tackle. So I'm not really someone who looks really a lot forward, and I'd always hope to see us keep returning to the basics to get those right, to just chip away at those tiny margins of efficiency and get widespread benefits slowly building. I'm the wrong person probably to talk about real looking forward innovation, but let's just continue to make sure we can walk before we can run is my it would
be nice,
hope.
Wouldn't it, if contracts included a percentage of the contract for R&D and innovation? Because I know in public projects in Ireland a few years ago, like they would have this scheme called 10% for art. Yeah, because basically art, sculptures and various
creativity.
Were always the first thing to be stripped from the project. And so, yeah, they made it mandatory on projects to have a percentage of the budget dedicated to art, to make beautiful places. And yeah, so imagine if contracts included a 10% for R&D and innovation, and
wow.
you couldn't spend that on anything else but
that, and it had to be spent.
Innovative solutions and research and development, and then the research and development obviously be shared back to the clients that they could then
continuous improvement and
well, they could share that with future teams. So one company could do some innovation, and that innovation, it doesn't stay in the company, because that, I really think innovation is occurring in the industry. I mean, the industry is doing fantastic things at a project level, but that innovation never expands to the broader industry. And sometimes it doesn't even expand to the broader company. I mean, you probably find that in Kier that there's certain groups that are doing fantastic things on projects, but the learning from that doesn't even get to the next team, a different team.
Absolutely.
Within your own organization, let alone the greater industry. So the industry is innovative in what it does, but the innovation
doesn't always get repeated and grow legs and get widespread. Yeah, no, and you hit the nail on the head saying, like, looking internally as well, and we see that, and it's really important that we have those sort of peaks of certain projects do fantastic things, but to try and then get that scalable across the business, and especially when you're, you could be delivering a low value, quick turnaround project, or it could be a 5-year, mega infrastructure project, to try and make some of those learnings scalable and understandable across the business, and roll out the proportional benefits and ways of working is really tricky. But and that's the bit that excites me, actually. Trying to get that wider spread benefit. That's why I get up in the morning, I think. But love to see the fantastic innovative peaks as well. But yeah, trying to scale it. That's the challenge.
So you are an innovator then?
Perhaps.
So John, we're coming up to the hour. Any further questions from your side?
No further questions from my side. I'd just like to thank Andy for taking the time on behalf of myself, Ralph, and the aecHive community as well. Everything that you've spoken about here today will be well received, and it would help. I think it's going to really help your end goal of scaling and getting that wider spread adoption. So good luck in your future works with UK BIM Alliance and Kier, and maybe we can help you out someday with the automated workflows between your CD solutions.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
No, I think it's both of you. Really, really enjoyed it. We'll probably talk all day.
Absolutely. And also from my side, Andy, I'd just really like to thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. I definitely think the community appreciates people like yourself, willing to share, and because everybody's, I think, looking for ways to improve things. So we appreciate that. I just remind you and also other people listening about our aecHive platform, that you can go and sort of share information, create posts of things that your business is doing so that other people can see that, discuss it, comment on it, etc.
And also one thing that I've been using it for is we aggregate all of the content, particularly podcasts at this moment, into one platform. I've found it a hugely valuable resource to listen and explore the world's podcasts of people like us talking about really important topics. So if you do have half an hour, that's my go-to place. So I'd probably invite users or listeners to discover there as well.
So thanks both of you for your time. I really appreciate it, and we'll definitely be talking more in the future.
Definitely. It's a pleasure to be involved. Thanks, guys. Really good.